21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
An entrepreneur told me earlier today, he said, when you're building a new product or you're entering into a new business, or when this, always plan on failure first. Expect that it's going to fail. And I think that is a really big hook, because what that reminds and should remind every entrepreneur about is the fact that they have to be thinking 2 steps ahead, not just one. They have to expect that what they're doing is going to fail, and they have to move and pivot and adjust accordingly to accept that. Because if it was easy to do what we do, everyone would be doing it. And there are certain reasons intrinsic to each person why they are choosing to live this life. I guess the question comes down to, are you ready for it? And if you are, or if you're already there, think next steps. What happens if this doesn't work? Hi, my name is Patrick Wood. I'm a 30-year entrepreneur. Been working in an entrepreneurial capacity for essentially the last almost over 30 years of my professional career. I guess my bailiwick, certainly the avenue and the industry that I've worked in, has always been in finance and capital markets, both in Canada and the United States primarily. I guess coming back to my background a little bit, I started out as a stockbroker back in the early 90s, back when stockbrokers were a thing. Of course, no one made any income as a stockbroker. You had to eat what you killed, and that actually combined with a lot of family factors. Families, been entrepreneurs for eons, created a backdrop for me to really take being an entrepreneur very seriously and explore all the avenues to being an entrepreneur as I could. To today, one of my key roles is acting as a CEO of not a startup, but a very early stage public company based out of New York and Toronto, which is essentially a company that is looking to really displace and transform the way that both credit markets and crypto markets work for hedging. And to the point that I said, entrepreneurs should always plan for failure, that is an absolute truth. Entrepreneurs always are enamored with what they're doing. However, the world is very different than we are. Our customers, our clients, the people we are essentially looking to work with might have very different views than we do, and that is a very, very constant. That's a very constant thing, and so in my experience, the ability to expect that you're going to fail is an absolute. It should be a leading mindset in a way, because very few entrepreneurs hit it off on their first shot, or their second, or their third, or their fourth, so on. It takes a long time, which many of you who are listening to this and people thinking and contemplating about following this pathway have experienced or should be thinking about experiencing. But from what we've discovered, certainly myself and my team over the years, and people that we've got working with us, is that you have to be ready to kind of think 2 steps ahead. Think about, okay, we have a great product, we have a great service, whatever it might be that you're working on and working toward. Expect that there could be failure, and in that environment and in that frame of thought, understand that you should always be thinking about what to do if that failure comes to fruition. And the way that we've dealt with that successfully, very recently as well, is we did a little product line pitch, or swivel. We at one point were focused on, in our small little public company, which is called Delphex Capital Markets. We were really kind of thinking, okay, the credit markets are the right place for us to play. Hedging, and providing downside protection in credit markets is the right pathway for us. Not necessarily wrong, but it was certainly, not a win. And, when we're looking at getting a win, which is what we were all looking to do in our careers, and certainly in our products and our services as entrepreneur thinkers and workers, is we really are, kind of thinking, okay, what do we do next? And in our case, we thought, gosh, why wouldn't we apply our product and our solution slash service, as a broker dealer, somebody selling new products, to the crypto markets? And lo and behold, just that small little shift, leveraging the existing infrastructure, all of the things that we had put together to get to that point of having something fantastic, we were able to adapt that to a new market, a market that is much faster, much more dynamic, where the need is certainly much stronger. And the response, we can certainly say, and when I say we, myself and my team, I will definitely say that it's been very, very successful, and it's brought us to a point where we understood that hey, we weren't really thinking failure, but we were thinking, gosh, we accepted the fact that it was looking like a failure, and we needed to act, and certainly adapt the product to something more specific, where like I said, where the wind was at hand. When people are contemplating being an entrepreneur, lots of advantages, so many disadvantages. In fact, I think the disadvantages, to be quite frank, probably outweigh the advantages. Everyone, and to be, to that point, if it was easy to be an entrepreneur and easy to be in business for yourself, everyone would do it. Why wouldn't you? It's certainly not. It's an absolute slog. It's a challenge. It takes decades in some cases to get it right. Unfortunately, those decades mean that you get older. So, at that point, it's almost, it's cathartic in a way, but it's anticlimactic as well. That if and when you hit that high point, you end up, really kind of just, you're almost blasé about it, because you've suffered so much over the years. You've put so much work into things that haven't produced. It's almost as if you're absolutely going out and inflicting self-harm on yourself. It's almost, it's almost in some ways sinister being an entrepreneur, to your own self, and to what could be a much easier pathway, and that would be a career of employment, working within an organization that's much bigger, etc. I don't know why we do it. I think it's very strange, but I would say in my case, though, the idea of freedom, and self-governance, but also being in control, or at least thinking that you're in control of your destiny, is much more important to somebody like myself in what I do. So the leap that we took, and when I say we, I kind of took within the company that we're running right now, Delphex, is based on the premise that we have a product and a solution that helps protect people when times get tough. And to that end, we're really, like I said, originally focused on the credit markets. But when we saw the crypto markets, especially treasuries, so companies that are called digital asset treasuries, these are, essentially the public companies. They go public with the premise that they have to raise capital from shareholders. They in turn invest that into crypto. And the idea is that they continue that portfolio type approach to crypto on an ongoing basis. And anyway, I guess it was the beginning of last summer that we were approached by a private equity group out of New York who said, look, we want to take your little public company and turn it into a treasury. We examined that, of course, seriously. But then we also noticed that, gosh, there's a lot of risk in the system. lots of leverage, lots of things that are very, dangerous. And we thought, okay, for a crypto treasury, I mean, there's a ton of them now. There's over 200 publicly traded ones in Canada and the US. And we said, okay, that's a crowded field, but is there something else that this field needs? And it absolutely needed a proper hedge, a tool that is not like an OTC option or these other things that are out there, but something that is safe, secure, fully collateralized, that has none of the stuff called counterparty risk. Anyway, to the layman, it really is a very simple product, but it's a way for these treasuries to really differentiate themselves. So we see a gap there that Wall Street, nobody else was kind of covering, and we said, and we already had the product line. We had all of the, essentially the goalposts that we had with our credit product. We were able to move them over to a new field, which was crypto, very easily. And that's what we did. And to that end, it was very surprising to us because we realized in speaking with a lot of the crypto treasuries out there that they really were looking to differentiate themselves. They're in a lot of trouble right now because their share prices are getting really, really hit hard. And all of them are underperforming the underlying currency or asset, which is Bitcoin over the last year. So, in that kind of an environment, and certainly I noticed that there was a real gap. And I also realized, 30 years in this business, these guys are so over levered, they're so dangerous, they're precariously positioned, such that if there is a big sell-off in Bitcoin and crypto, which, we got a little taste of that a few weeks ago, when there was a sudden flush in that market, which was all driven on derivatives and leverage. That things could get really bad. So the one who actually is smart enough, and this is our sales pitch to these folks, it's like, differentiate yourself, protect your shareholders, and if you're going to run a treasury, run it like an actual, like a proper treasury. Have risk controls in place. Think about risk management. Forget about seeking alpha all the time and returns and all that other stuff. Protect yourselves and protect your shareholders. And that's been our message. And that message is a helpful one because no one else is saying it. And so to be that lone voice in a very, very, I would call it psycho market, which it is, we really ended up once again differentiating ourselves, but giving others the ability to do that too. And like I said, it's really we're about to really kind of take off with the smart treasuries that we've identified who said that they want to move forward with us. So as an entrepreneur, you're always thinking that you have the best thing since sliced bread. I mean, I've heard it a million times. Every entrepreneur out there thinks, oh man, my thing is the best. What we're doing is awesome. Wrong, 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 wrong. That's why I always come back to that one thing. And it was something I recently heard by another really smart entrepreneur who was absolutely spot on. He said, always expect failure, and be prepared for it to the point where, don't go into a severe depression, but, keep doing what you're doing, but be prepared to adjust and, think a bit differently. And if you can take what you already have and leverage it a bit to do something different, then yeah, you got to do that. And to that end, it does speak a little bit about having multiple products or multiple services under that one umbrella. Why focus on just one thing or one market when you can think about others? And so that kind of experience is definitely one that can be super rewarding at getting the win. A lot of the people on this podcast, who are the viewers, are probably in a field that is, somewhat similar to ours, or, where they themselves could possibly be a small company CEO. Or CFO, or somebody filling those boots, and so one of the other things that I kind of left out of the discussion was collaboration, and collaboration is one of the greatest things as well that we've been very fortunate to have over the years, because we've always brought in key advisors and people who have really helped with product development, certainly with strategy and other things like that, and those people for us, they're very, very meaningful. We wouldn't have a company, we wouldn't be where we are without those types of people. So I think, to any viewers who are listening to this who see a place where there's a fit, be it in the sense that, they see that our service is a fit for, what they're seeking, or where there's, some synergies, that's obviously a very important thing for us is to have that dialogue. And to that end, once again, that collaboration, being in the same field, so to speak, is really great, because you never know where that could and might lead at some point down the road. So from that point of view, like I said, collaboration for us, and having the door open. We've always had the door open to everybody. So regarding our exit strategy, and kind of where we see things going over the next, 1 to, let's say, 3 years. 5 years is a little too far out, but yeah, 1 to 3 years, we do actually see, Delphex being sold. We think an acquisition or M&A, something along those lines, and because it's just, it's one out of many. No one replicates what we do. So the value add to any larger organization is going to be huge. After that, though, the idea would certainly be to look at building our own. So once again, staying within the same sphere of finance and capital markets, but building our own private equity group. Probably something that really focuses on that niche business that we've always kind of focused on, and that is, small, starting companies, looking at Series A's in the private space, or B's, and then, taking them public through the public market system. That's what we've always done. That's what we, certainly I intend to do that. But once again, me and some partners, we've already spoken about, possibly putting out our own shingle and building our own PE group. And we have lots of support for that too. So that's kind of the roadmap going forward for the next 1 to 3. To leave you with this, I think if you see some synergies or some ways to collaborate, or if you're interested to find out more about us, when I say us, my company and myself and all the people we have on the team, always reach out to us. You can go to our website at www.delphx.com. So delphx.com. Or you can reach us at info@delphx.com. And once again, please don't feel shy to reach out. Always happy to get in touch with folks.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.